David Ornstein has announced that Mason Greenwood will be leaving Manchester United on a full deal. We'll be talking about that. We'll also be looking at Jared Branthwaite's move to Manchester United. 2 bids have been in, 2 bids have been rejected, but there are now reports that a 3rd bid is expected. We also have a Here We Go for Donny van der Beek and his move. We'll look at what exactly is going on there. It's Wednesday the 10th of July. This is the news. This is Stretford Paddock. Let's get into it. First of all then, like we said, David Ornstein, and I'm reading straight from the source here. This came out last night. Exclusive. Marseille reached agreement with Manchester United to sign Mason Greenwood. Proposed deal remains subject to 22-year-old forward's approval, not in place yet. Price at €31.6 million fixed. 27.6 of those are fixed. 4 million are in add-ons and a large share of future sale to Manchester United. There are reports that that percentage of the future sale is as much as 50%. There was also other reports, and this is something I've never seen, and this is almost like what we're looking at when the Glazers were selling Old Trafford, selling Manchester United, is that the reports that Manchester United can actually pay more money to Marseille to get more of the future sell-on fee. So almost like we have the option to give them a bit of their cash back in order to have a percentage of the sell-on fee. So let's say United see that Mason Greenwood is likely to be sold somewhere in the region of, and we know his potential, somewhere in the region of 80 to 100 million pounds. Obviously, that would give United anywhere between 40 and 50 million. We can kind of say to Marseille, actually, for another couple of million, we want 60% of his sell-on fee rather than 50. Supposedly, that's the report. But what David Ornstein's saying, of course, Tier 1, as reliable as it gets, is that a €31.6 million deal has been agreed. 27.6 of those millions are fixed and 4 million in add-ons. Very small amount of add-ons there, but crucially that large sell-on fee, thought to be around 50%, means that if he does the work that people think he may well do, Mason Greenwood at Marseille, Manchester United could be in for another big money deal in a few years' time. We've seen similar sort of talk with Joshua Zirkzee in Bayern Munich. They're thought to get around 50% of the deal. When that happens between Bologna and Manchester United for the centre-forward, United put in a similar clause in Mason Greenwood. Obviously, we need to get him off the books. That's been decided. It seems as though that was decided a couple of years ago. Then all of a sudden, last summer, just to repeat, we had that whole deal where he was going to be coming back. Then there was backlash from fans, backlash from supporters groups, backlash from charities. The club then folded on that decision and announced that he wouldn't be coming back. Then he goes on loan for a year at Getafe. I believe he was their player of the season. And now United are in a pickle where he's worth a lot of money, but of course because of what's happened and because of the fact that everyone knows around Europe that United want to get rid of him, we're having to let him go for around €30 million. That's where that big, large share of future sales comes in, because we think he could be worth 60, 70, 80, 100 million in a year or two's time. Let's not forget, I believe he's still only 22 years old, or is he 23 years old now? 22. And there's still a good chance in 2-3 years' time, when he'll be Mbappe's age, he could be going for big money to a top club once maybe the dust has settled a little bit in terms of public perception about what has happened. If he's been playing in Europe for 3 or 4 years, we already heard rumours that Barcelona were looking at him a couple of years ago, at the start of last season and at the start of this season. Maybe that big move will happen for him. But Mason Greenwood looks to be leaving Manchester United finally after 2.5 years out in the cold. It looks as though he is going to Marseille for €31.6 million. Let's move on to not Euro, but Branthwaite. This is Jared Branthwaite, and this is from The Times, which again, very, very reliable sources here. Martin Hardy from The Times. Manchester United to return with 3rd bid for Jared Branthwaite. Everton turned down the second offer worth £50 million for the 22-year-old centre-back, but United are close to agreeing a £43 million deal with Matthias de Ligt from Bayern Munich. We've got a lot of reports that say these two deals are independent of each other. United want to sign either de Ligt or Euro and Jared Branthwaite. These two things aren't dependent on each other. Maybe all three won't happen, but it looks as though 2 centre-backs are United's absolute must this summer, potentially even 3. Some reports from the MEN last night suggest that even 3 could happen should Harry Maguire leave the club. This is obviously massive, isn't it? Because United are clearly going back and forth with Everton, trying to find a deal, trying to find a number here. Everton reportedly seem to want 70 million quid, and you think that is a lot of money for a guy who's had one very good season. And it wasn't a world-class season, it was a very good season, but you want 72 million quid for him, or 70 million quid for him. It seems like a lot, and United are making a good effort to not pay that up front, not pay that huge fee that we've done in the past with other players, Anthony and Maguire being two obvious examples that jump out to you. United don't want to have their pants pulled down here, and I think personally, under 60 million, you're looking at a deal that, if it's in the 50s, yes, that's a lot of money, but I just think that you can maybe stomach that. It looks as though the deals, the days of getting in for under 50 are completely gone. We made an offer already that was around 50 that's been rejected. So now you got to keep it under the next threshold. We can't do under 50, let's do under 60. I think once you start getting over 60, and especially 70 and above, it goes from being a deal where, oh, that's a lot of money, to bloody hell, he'd better be good. You start the he'd better be good going at around 65, 70 million personally. I think we've got to get him under 60. And hopefully Everton realise that whilst obviously he's a very sellable asset, whilst they realise that, you know, he's a good player and they've got their own financial worries to think about, maybe they weren't as pressing as they once were, but Everton still don't have a lot of expendable cash. But they do have to realise, surely, that if United pull out this season and this guy has a bad year, or Everton get relegated, which is definitely a possibility, if he has a year where you go, actually, maybe it's not what we thought it was, all of a sudden you're begging teams for 30 million quid. They know that. There's not always an infinite number of years where a player looks like he's the player that you think he is. And here's the other thing, that doesn't even necessarily mean he's any worse than we think. He could have a bad year next season and still go on to be world class for Manchester United. But these are the numbers that you're dealing with. Look at Jack Grealish. He was, one Aston Villa loss away from them getting relegated and him being sold for about 25, 30 million quid. And they stayed up at the last game of the season, and I think 12 months later he goes to Man City for 100 million. That's the difference. If they'd have lost one game, Aston Villa, someone's getting Jack Grealish, maybe even Man United is getting Jack Grealish for 30 million quid. Do you know what I mean? And if Everton find themselves in a similar position this season, where if they lose their last game of the season, they're getting relegated, you're not getting 70 million quid for a player who's just been relegated, I can tell you that much. They obviously know that. I think personally, all of that will factor into them lowering that price significantly from 70 million quid. And if they don't, United genuinely should walk away. I think up to 60, we can phrase it as United fans. Everton can say they got a load of money for him. What would he be? The sort of fourth highest ever paid for a centre-back? Maybe even higher than that. He's obviously behind Van Dijk, behind Maguire. I think you're looking at maybe Wesley Fofana as well. You're in that kind of fourth or fifth, maybe sixth most expensive centre-back of all time territory. They can frame that as, wow, look how much money we've got for this kid. And United can say, they wanted 70 and we got him for 58. We've taken a good chunk off there. But any more than that, and I think we're getting into really silly territory here. But Martin Hardy of The Times reporting that United will be going back in for a third bid. We'll have to wait and see when that happens and if it is accepted. Hopefully, we can have a little bit of a behind-the-scenes chat with Everton. What are you actually taking for this guy? Do you know when you're at a car boot and you see a load of old sort of 442 magazines, you think, I want to read about Maldini in 2006. How much for the stack? 20 quid. Not happening, mate. Come here. Take him to one side. Come off the stall. I know there's people queuing up for your match attacks. I don't care. Come here. Come behind the Avensis. What are we talking for the 442s, mate? And then you get him down to 12 quid. And you've bought the bundle and you're both happy. Why can't we just have a little one-to-one chat? Dan Ashworth, come here, boy. Hey, come here. What are we talking for the Branth? 56 million. Right. You go back in there, pretend I've twisted your arm, act like it's a good deal. I'll go back to Mr. Barada and tell him I've got the deal of the century. Win-win, chicken din. Donny van de Beek to Girona. Here we go. Deal in place with Man United. Permanent move for €500,000. What? What is this, 1991? What is this, Paul Pescasolido signing for somebody? What do you mean €500,000? That's not even money. I mean, for us it is. That's as much as I'll learn in the next 40 years. But for a lot of people, football-wise, this is chump change. This is peanuts. Fixed fee plus several add-ons. Now here's where it gets tasty. Easy add-ons to bring the fee up to 4 to 5 million euros, which easy add-ons, what we've got to assume, that's mostly sort of appearance related. Does he play the games? To me, that's what easy add-ons would suggest. It's literally just, can he stay fit? Do we like this guy enough to start him most weeks? Okay, there's one. Plus extra add-ons that can make it 15 million euros. That's probably going to be a whole more load of appearances, maybe even number of goals, maybe even goals and assists. Maybe staying at the club for 3 or 4 years. Maybe each year he stays, we get an extra 2 million. You can see things like that. I think that Barcelona are a big fan of staggering out contracts, staggering out payments, across the number of appearances and years that a player stays at a club. But imagine somehow they sort of sneak around the radar and they paid 500,000 euros for Donny van der Beek. I was talking about this yesterday. I mean, the reports were 450,000, but let's say it's 500,000. That's 1.5%, not even 1.25% of what United paid for him. Have you ever seen a transfer where the player gets sold? He ain't left on a free, by the way. The player gets sold for 98.5% less than they bought him for. I didn't even know that was possible. I feel really bad for Donny van der Beek, and I'm not in the camp that he think he should have played more. I don't think he deserved to play more than he has at Man United. But when a transfer goes this way, it is sad. He's one of the most promising young midfielders in the world when we bought him, and he's leaving 4 years later for 90, whatever it is, 90% less than we bought him for. It's sad, but hopefully he can get his career on track. And also for 2 reasons. 1, it helps him out, and 2, that means United are getting 15 million euros. Let's hope both of those things can happen. Right, that's going to be all from me this morning. We do have a very, very special interview coming this afternoon with Florian Plettenberg, German transfer expert. You know him, I know him. He's been given, or he will be given, all of the latest breaking news on Manchester United's transfers this summer. This has been Stretford Paddock. Hit subscribe and hit like on this video if you haven't already, and we'll see you in a bit.